Hi, everybody. Good evening. This is Esther Gonzalez with SHIP. And I did want to let you know that we're going to give members a few more minutes to join, and we'll begin promptly at 5:05 Pacific, 8:05 Eastern. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, SHPE Familia, and welcome to the 2020 Scholarship Webinar Series. We are so excited to present the second of our four-part webinar series. As you know, scholarship applications are now open and available by visiting ship.org, clicking on the student header in the main menu, and then navigating to the scholarship link. The purpose of the second webinar is to give you a toolbox of 10 things you can do to write a resume that will get you noticed. Treat these recommendations as a checklist for writing your resume to ensure that you have followed these steps before uploading your resume document to your application. Before we get started, some housekeeping. If you have any questions at any point throughout this webinar for us, please feel free to send them through the Ask a Question box. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session if time permits. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, do not worry. A script with all questions and answers will be posted on our webpage after the webinar has concluded. This PowerPoint deck will also be posted. And lastly, I'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks, including Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. We want to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to submit a rockstar application to our scholarship program. So without further ado, let's get started. As I said, I'm Esther Gonzalez, your moderator and the scholarship program manager. I am your go-to person for any questions you may have regarding our scholarship program. This includes application questions, requirements, and technical issues. I have listed my email on the screen, and you can contact me anytime. But please note there is plenty of information on the scholarship webpage that may answer any questions you have as well. Now, enough about me. I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker, Ilianna Salas. Ilianna Salas is a first-generation college graduate from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. She manages marketing and advancement initiatives within the Cal Poly College of Engineering and works directly with corporate partners to connect students with career opportunities. Ilianna's background in marketing, coupled with her recruiting experience, has given her a unique perspective on personal branding. So we are very lucky to have an industry expert share her knowledge with us today. But before I hand things over to Ilianna, we will be conducting a poll to get to know more about you, our audience. We have two questions today. I'm going to go ahead and launch the first poll and give everybody about 30 seconds to answer this question. So please answer the question and submit that now. Ten more seconds here. And we're closing in 3, 2, and 1. So we're split 50-50 here with undergraduate and graduate students. Thank you for joining. Also, if any of you are having a watch party at your college or university, please include that in the chat window as well, with information about how many attendees you have, as we do like to keep track of the total number of attendees viewing our webinar. And the second question I'd like to share with you today is just an informational question asking if you have created a resume before. Closing the poll in 4, 3, 2, and 1. So it looks like everyone has, at some point in their academic or professional career, created a resume. So that's great news, and we do thank you for joining, because that means you want to take your resume to the next level. So at this point, I will hand it over to Ilianna to guide us through her presentation.
Thank you so much, Esther, and thank you all again for tuning in. I'm really excited to be presenting on this topic. So without further ado, let's get right in. You know, I know how daunting it is to write an essay. I've written many myself, and it's a lot to take in. You know, when you start thinking about all the other resumes that may look just like yours, and you think, when you're looking at that stack of resumes at the career fair or, you know, wherever you're applying to, you know, you think, how do you make yours stand out? Well, hopefully after today, after you hear all the useful tips that I have for you, you'll feel empowered and ready to craft a resume that will get you noticed. Give me a second here. So today we're going to cover the 10 tips to write a resume that will get you noticed. First one, defining your purpose. Second, crafting your advertisement. Third, what to consider before you begin writing. Fourth, keeping your contact information clear. Strategic order of experience. Using the right words. Number 7, framing your non-related experience. Number 8, listing your degree information. Number 9, what to include in your skills and awards sections. And that last but not least, evaluating your final resume. And I think it's the most important part. Before I dive into this, let me just say that there's no perfect way to craft a resume. I'm sure you've done a Google search of writing resumes and you found that there are millions of ways to write one. I think what's important is just that it's a reflection of you and what you're proud of, right? So before you start writing your resume, you want to think about what the purpose of it is, right? What is the resume for? Is it to get a job? Is it to get an internship? What do you want the reader to know about you? What do you hope that first impression is when someone reads your resume? You know, first impressions are really important, and your resume is one, right? When you're going to a career fair, you hand them this resume. Your resume and the way that you greet them is all part of that brand and your first impression. What do you hope to get out of this resume? Do you want to get a job? Do you want to get an internship? Do you want a scholarship? And then lastly, something else to think about is if someone had never met you, would they understand the skills and accomplishments that you are most proud of? So, your resume is essentially an advertisement. It's showcasing what you bring to the table. And, as I'm sure you're aware, advertisements come in all sorts of forms. There isn't one way to do it. But what I think they all have in common are, they have one well thought out goal. How do they want the viewer to feel? They highlight the best parts of the product or service. Think about how that applies to you in writing your resume. They are clear and concise. And I cannot stress this enough. Your resume is not a book. Thinking about going back to the idea of an advertisement, advertisements aren't long, but they keep you engaged and wanting to try out that product. Think about this in terms of your resume. Keep your reader engaged and curious about wanting to learn more about you. And lastly, well, not lastly, but fourth, tailor your resume to your audience. You know, not every person likes orange juice, some like apple juice. The resume you submit for an internship will be different than the one you submit for a scholarship. There are different focuses. It takes a little bit more time, and I know it's a bit of a pain to, you know, reevaluate your resume every time you submit it, but putting in the extra effort into tailoring it will give you better results. And then last but not least, capture your audience in a short span of time. Just like in an advertisement, you want them to understand what it is that is special about you in that short time. So think about those things when, you know, when you're crafting your advertisement. And now, before you begin writing, a few more things to think about. Again, what is your goal? What do you want to come out of this? And understand that every resume is different. You may be looking at, you know, your peers' resumes and seeing that they're not like yours, but that doesn't mean that yours isn't correct. Everyone is different. Everyone has different skills. Everyone has different accomplishments. Everyone brings different things to the table. Take time to write your resume. You will not get a good outcome if you are putting the effort into it. And it will show. And again, you know, stressing the idea of tailoring your resume to the job you are applying to. The same resume will not work for a job that requires more managerial skills as, you know, a job that's more technical. There's a different focus for each of those. Remember that your resume is a living document. You should always make an effort to improve and revise. As you're getting more experience, really think about what whether the content that you currently have on there is relevant, is it needed, and how can it be improved. And then lastly, spell check. It's so important that you, going back to the idea of your personal brand, every component matters, right? All these details, making sure that your spelling is correct, all these details combined make your advertisement, your brand. So now let's dive into the resume. So what are the components? Your name and contact information are usually at the top. You have your relevant work experience, leadership experience, depending on, what you are applying for. This can kind of change. You have your degree information, pretty standard. You have your skills section. This could be certifications, training, things that are important for the job that you're applying to. And then last but not least, leadership and campus involvement. And even on some resumes, it makes sense to include this as a separate section and higher than your skills or relevant work experience. It all kind of just depends on what your goal is. So here's my fourth tip. Keep your contact information clear. This should always be at the top of your resume. Use a professional email that you check regularly. Don't use the same email, that you've been using since, 6th grade. Use your school email if you can, and use emails that you check regularly. It shouldn't be your spam email, because it's very easy to overlook, and you don't want to miss out on opportunities. You should definitely include professional designations next to your name. So if you are an EIT, this is a great place to put that, and it definitely draws attention. Going back to the idea of you want to capture your audience in a short amount of time, this is a great way. If your LinkedIn is up to date, include it. But again, only if your LinkedIn is up to date. If it's applicable to the position, include a portfolio website. And last but not least, don't overload this section. Only keep what's important. What's important is that your name and contact information is accurate. So tip number 5, you have 6 seconds. They say that it's about 6 seconds that you have to impress your reader. Think about, how do you want to catch their eye? The most relevant experience should go at the very top, regardless of the date. You don't want to, you want to make sure that what's at the top is what's going to catch the eye of the recruiter, right? Choose the work experience that best suits the job you are applying to. You don't need to list every single job you've had. Less is more. And then, jobs unrelated to your major provide great experience, but keeping at the top of your list may cause relevant experience to be overlooked. You might have an ongoing campus job that you have during the year, but you wouldn't want to put that at the very top, or before an internship that you had last summer related to your major. So those are some things to keep in mind when you're ordering your experience. My 6th tip. So you want to use the right words. I've said this a few times, but less is more. Keep sentences clear and concise. How you word your sentences can make or break your resume. Avoid flowery jargon. Don't add in words just to make your resume longer. Look at the job description that you are applying for and take note of words used more than once. When you submit your resume, a lot of times they use filters and they're looking for keywords. Note those keywords in the job description, and if it fits naturally into your resume, then go ahead and use it. Avoid starting each sentence with the same action word, right? Really think about, if you find yourself using that same action word, think about, is the sentence relevant? Do I need it? So just think about that. And then lastly, focus on achievements rather than duties. And if you can, quantify it. Readers want to know what you've done, what you can bring to the table. And they'd rather know about how you can, benefit their organization, what you can accomplish with them as well. So my 7th tip. So, not everyone, has an internship early on in their college career, and that's totally fine. Work experience that isn't directly related to your major is still very valuable. What matters is how you frame it. There are transferable skills in any position. So, one example that I used is, an on-campus job. So, let's say you work on campus restocking products. And let's say the task that you want to put on your resume is keeping inventory of new products. But really the skill that you're getting from that, and that, you could use this wording on your resume, is that you are organized and you pay attention to detail. Another example is, being a cashier during peak hours. Let's give it a second here to come back on. But, being a cashier during peak hours, although it may seem, it's not an easy task. There's a lot of multitasking involved, and it's a high stress situation. And these are all really valuable experiences that an employer would value. Let's see. Okay, we are back on. Cool. So, think about, again, just because it is not directly related to your major doesn't mean you can't put it on there. And just think about the way that you're wording things as you're writing your resume. Okay. So number 8, listing your degree information. If you are still in college and don't have a lot of work experience, definitely include your degree information at the very top after your name. Include your graduation year and full degree information. Only include your GPA if it is over 3.2. But again, GPA is not everything. If you have other experiences, other skills, other leadership roles, you'll still shine, on your resume. So number 9, so listing skills and awards, are fine, but only if they serve a purpose. Again, keeping it clear and concise. Don't use any acronyms. Assume that the reader has, no idea which organization, gave you this skill or award. Keep it short, keep it simple. And again, do not list things to make your resume longer. If the skill or award is not pertinent to the job or the scholarship or the internship that you're applying to, there's no need to add it there. Don't add in soft skills like communication, a hard worker, a team player, or any other overused words. Those are things that you can showcase when you interview or when you meet them. So no need to add those onto your resume. And then avoid using awards you received prior to your college career unless you're a graduating senior who has not started college, right? Keep your resume relevant. And here is my 10th tip. And I think for me, I think it's the most important one. Evaluating your resume. Your resume is a living document and you should constantly improve it, right? I'm sure you'll hear this from many people, but spell check, spell check, spell check. One small error can take away from the credibility of your resume. If you interview and you talk about how you're a detail-oriented person, but then have misspelled words on your resume, it takes away from that credibility. Read over your resume once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Take some time and then read it again. Sometimes when you've read the same document that you wrote, you miss a lot of things. So take time to write it and take time to review it. Have a friend look over it. Again, sometimes, when you write it and you read the same document, you overlook a lot of things. Having a fresh set of eyes to look it over will definitely help you. And again, once you feel comfortable with your resume, check it one more time just to be sure. Take advantage of your university's career services office or program. Have a professional critique your resume if possible. So, there's services that want to help you. Take advantage of them. And then lastly, evaluate whether your final resume accomplishes the purpose you set at the beginning. When we were setting our goals, when we were crafting our advertisement, think about, does the resume reflect who you are? Does it reflect what you want to achieve? So these are some of the tools that have helped me and that have helped others to craft a resume that stands out. I am going to hand it over to Esther now to open it up for some questions.
Yes. Hi, Ilianna. Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. I was taking some notes here, and I just wanted to summarize some of the things that stood out to me in being the scholarship manager, some of the items that I see that scholarship applicants kind of trip up on, and that I want to make sure that you don't. The first is know your purpose. Do not submit a resume that you submitted for another job. And I've seen it happen. A resume comes in and in the objective, it tells me about the job that you were applying to. You don't need an objective in your resume that you are submitting for a scholarship. We know that since you're submitting this resume as part of a scholarship application, that your goal, your objective is to receive a scholarship. So please leave the objective out and any other information that would tell me that you're just copying and pasting this resume from one place to another. Customize, customize, customize. One thing that Ilianna mentioned, I want to talk about it is, don't include your GPA if it's not above a 3.2. That being said, we are really looking for all of your experience with work, school, extracurriculars, leadership, volunteer, all of the above. This is a way for you to list it out for us to get to know you, so that you don't have to waste time in your essay talking about these things because we've already seen them. So that being said, don't add items that aren't relevant or for the audience just to fill up space. You have very limited space. You have one page. So use it wisely and use it smartly. And don't think that because you're not including a GPA, if it's lower than 3.2, it would be counted against you. It's just we don't want the reader, like Ilianna said, 6 seconds is what you have to catch our attention. You don't want that 6 seconds to be drawn to your GPA if it's not the strongest part of your resume. The holistic review, I want to emphasize that we have a holistic review for all of our applications, and we understand that all of our applicants have strengths in different areas, and we want to make sure that we capture those strengths, or that you capture your strengths in your application, and no small mistakes. So proofreading is very important, and the reason why those small mistakes are so important is because that separates somebody who has invested time in their application. It shows that you really care about this opportunity, that you really want it, because you took the time to proofread it 3 times yourself, get your friend to proofread it also, and then get a professional to read it as well. So if you have 3 different people reading it at 3 different times, then the likelihood that you're going to have a small mistake, which they stand out when you're reading somebody else's work, are minimized. So with that being said, I would like to open up the question panel now for anybody that may have any questions. They could be related to resumes or scholarships in general. Okay, if there are no questions at this point, I'll circle back to the questions box. I do want to highlight here some of our upcoming webinars next week. It's about telling your story through a compelling essay. And our speaker for that is a language arts professional, and so she will be able to guide you through. If you're somebody who has writer's block, if you're a STEM major and English writing isn't your thing, then we're going to give you the tools that you need to be able to write a great essay, a compelling essay with the word limits that we have for that, because you do have at least 3 mandatory essays for any one of the scholarships that you apply for. And then we have our last part of our webinar series is Wow, What a Letter. What a Letter. That's with Dr. Kimberly Douglas Mankin, who is one of our program directors and was a professor at an engineering school for over 20 years. So she has experience being on the other end of the table, knowing what it's like when students request letters and how to help you navigate that process based on what professor preferences are. So with that, I will open it up for questions. Here we go. After I did my master's, I worked for some time. How do I frame my resume to account for that and skills I got from those years / job? This is from Maria Echeverria Molina. So I'll let Ilianna answer that question first, and then I'll go ahead and chime in from the SHPE perspective after.
Sorry, would you mind saying that one more time? I got caught up.
Sure.
Cut for me.
Yeah. So after I did my master's, I worked for quite some time. How do I frame my resume to account for that, the time and skills I got from those years and that job?
Yeah, I mean, again, think about your goal, right? What do you want to get out of it? Um, and focus on what makes you unique. Um, I like to look at other, other people's LinkedIn profiles, with similar career paths to mine, and just trying to understand what it is that they like to showcase. And I would apply it in this situation as well.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, Ilianna. And I also think that that the readers of our scholarship applications, they aren't looking for a direct path, because we know there's no direct path to success and no direct path to a certain degree or a certain job title, especially in our community where paths tend to be non-traditional and alinear. So what I would say is very much like on the slide that Ilianna had with transferable skills. Make sure that you're communicating what you're including as your experience, reflective of, so whatever your work experience was during that time, even if you took that time off to go volunteer with a certain organization, or you took that time off to take care of your family, like no matter what that situation was, there are transferable skills. And what I would say is to look at the essay questions for that scholarship that you're applying for, and try to make sure that your transferable skills that you're communicating align with what's being asked of you, or what's being looked at based on those essay questions. The next question that we have here, here we go. I'm looking to change fields, but I don't have direct experience in that field that I want to go into. How do I frame my experience in my current field, and how do I capture the reader in the first 6 seconds? So I will actually defer to Ilianna on that first part of your question, which is about changing fields and writing your experience so that it applies to another field.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, my first thought is taking the tasks or parts of the jobs that you've had or the internships that you had as of now, and putting those at the very top. If your degree is completely different from the career that you want to go into, I would bring that back down, towards the bottom. Going back to the work experience, obviously don't use the same wording that you used, for your previous career. Change the wording a little bit, and instead focus more on, maybe not so much the technical aspects, but more of the soft skills. So, one thing that comes to mind is, maybe you're going from more technical field to now more managerial field. Think about all those opportunities that you had in the previous, job where you led a team, or you started a project, or you started an initiative. Focus more on those things, because at the end of the day, you want to show the recruiter from that new career, that new field, that you're willing to learn, that you can take initiative, and that you can do the job regardless of your experience in that field.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that 100%. And Eric, For your question, what I would also say is that your professional reviewer should be the a professional in that field that you want to transition into. So leverage your SHPE media if you can't find somebody within your immediate network that is already in that field or that target company, then I would look to other specific professional organizations. For example, if you want to go into mechanical engineering, ASME is a great organization as well. Having a professional who's in that field already is going to know exactly how to change and frame your experience. I think this is more relevant. I think if you're going from technical to managerial, then it's definitely more doable on your own. But if you're going from technical to technical from one field to another, I think they are the subject matter experts that are going to know what exactly the recruiters are looking for in your experience and how you can state that explicitly. So I would definitely search for a professional in that field. Next question is from Paul. I had a question about how best to quantify my experiences. How do I go about this? I find it hard to frame my bullets to include numbers. Okay, Ilianna, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, of course. I'm trying to think of a good example, but thinking of, okay, processes, for example. If you created some sort of process that helped, increase, I don't know, production of a product that you designed or a product that you manage, quantifying that process. So it could be, we, doubled our sales, or we produced, 10% more, a month, or something like that. I think that's a great way of quantifying, your accomplishments.
Yep, definitely. And another thing that I would say about quantifying our experiences is that people are really looking, and this is regardless, I think this applies to scholarships and internships or jobs, is people are looking at, are you tracking your performance? So do you know what it is? Can you quantify, even when things are difficult to quantify, like those soft skills? Do you know when you're improving, and how do you know when you're improving? Do you know what success looks like? Do you know how to define a goal specifically? And do you know how to communicate improvement and success? So I would say that even when you're talking specifically to soft skills, that if you know how to track, okay, I know that it's difficult for me to communicate with other team members, right? But I was able to improve my communication in meetings by presenting X times per quarter to an interdisciplinary team, right? So that's something that may not be measured by my company, but it's something that I want to communicate as either improvement or success. So the next question I have is, for my question, I have applied to a company that I would love to receive an internship during the summer. The company itself is very competitive for my current major. For my question, if I have submitted my resume and information through the company website but did not hear back from them, would you recommend if I should send my information again?
Oh yeah.
Ilianna, do you want to take that one?
I'm going to be honest and say I wouldn't resubmit. I'm sure they have your resume. Instead, I would look into when that company has like local recruiting events. I know at Cal Poly, Apple does recruiting events a few times a year, and I'm sure you all know, but they receive tons of resumes. But getting that face-to-face time, you know, with their recruiters, you know, definitely helps. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think that's right. The only thing that I would add to that is that companies have retention cycles for resumes. So there is a set amount of time for how long your resume is going to sit there. So if for some companies it could be a year, for other companies it's 6 months. I know Google is 6 months. Some of the finance or like consulting companies, it's 1 year. So it really depends on the company. Find out what that time frame is, because you don't want to resubmit your resume because it might just void your application altogether. But you do want to find out what that time frame is, because you want to know, once your application is no longer in their system, right, when can you submit and apply again? And so the way to find that information is you should have some sort of contact information for an HR office, where you can reach out and say, hey, is my application still in order? Is it still in your system? And when can I reapply? So find out when that is. And like Ilianna mentioned, your goal after submitting an application is to have as many touch points with that company as possible. And those in person, over the phone, even through LinkedIn, if you're able to get connected through a professional connection via a student club on campus, or be it through SHPE, or however it is, those personal connections are invaluable and will go a very long way. Our last question here is, I also wonder that if I change my resume from job to job application, I would be seen as not being honest, that I am not mentioning all I have worked in. Any thoughts about it? This is from Milagros. So Milagros, can you answer, just add to the question box here and let me know if you're talking about you work multiple jobs and you are thinking of maybe not including some because they may not be relevant to the job you're applying to. Is that your question? I just want to, okay, you have a lot of experience in many jobs. Okay. Again, if possible, if it's for a company that is at your school, that's going to be visiting you, I would talk to the recruiter candidly. And the way that I would frame that conversation is saying, hey, I have ABC very pertinent experience to working at your company. But I've also worked DEF for whatever, and explain. You can explain why. Oh, you already graduated. Okay. And so when it matters is when, so you can't be dishonest. That's first and foremost. So when you are applying to a job and you are filling out, there's a difference between submitting a resume and submitting employee history. So your employee history needs to be 100% accurate. And they will even include information like, you know, make sure that you list everything. And if there were any gaps in your employment, make sure to include them. And this is a really tedious process in a job application where you have your resume and you're like going in manually and like, this was my start date, this was my end date, this was the company I worked for, this is the address of the company I worked for, and this is what I did there, this is my super, like all that information. That I would say you definitely need to include it there because that's verifiable information and you have to be 100% honest there. Now, whether it's relevant to include it in your resume, I would only include in your resume that experience which is most relevant to the job description. You have thoughts on that, Ilianna?
No, I completely agree. I think what you said was great. Yeah.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions? Thank you, Milagros, for your question. So the last thing that I will end with here, other than I would like to see you all, those of you that are students or pursuing academic degrees, be it undergraduate, graduate, or PhD. I would love for you all to attend our next 2 webinars and really leverage this time to pace out the different components of scholarship applications, which can seem intimidating to put it all together at once. So if you take this week to really work on your resume, then next week, once we have the essay webinar, you can take that week to work on your essay. And by the end of our webinar series, you should have the majority of your components for your application completed. So definitely leverage that. And I would also say that if you have, if your resume is something that you're struggling with, our RLDC events are coming up in all of our 7 regions. So these are our regional conferences that are much smaller in size than our national convention. We have attendees of about 300 to 500. Even if you're a professional, definitely attend, because we would have something very similar to this resume workshop there in person with professionals on site. There's no easier way to approach somebody and say, hey, can you look at my resume and can you review it, than in one of these settings, because people are already in the mindset of, I'm going to dedicate my entire day for professional development, and you're surrounded by your SHPE familia who's always looking to help each other out. So I really highly recommend that. Other than that, if you have any other questions, my email is on the second slide. Again, this presentation deck will be posted by tomorrow evening, and Ilianna's LinkedIn information is on there as well, and you're welcome to reach out to her. So thank you again, Ilianna. Thank you, attendees, for coming and joining us, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.